I'm Tabitha Rock.
And I'm Sam Davenport.
Born and bred in Melbourne, we live and breathe property, and we know the Melbourne market like the back of our hand. We've both been buying and selling real estate in Metro Melbourne for over 2 decades combined, and we've learned a few lessons along the way.
We're back for another riveting season of the Property Culture Podcast.
We are, and we have a very special guest.
Drew Woods from 8 Point Building Inspections.
Hey.
I love the clapping yourself.
I got to give yourself a bit of a clap every now and again.
You have got to give yourself a clap, Drew, because we, over the years, over our 15 plus years in the industry, have worked with many a building inspector. And we refer our clients to
exclusively
the man, the myth, the legend,
awesome,
Drew Woods from 8 Point Building Inspections, because he is the most meticulous building inspector we've ever worked with.
I know. And you know what? I was almost reluctant to get you on the podcast because I was like, the people will know our secret.
I know.
And they don't want you to get too busy.
Yeah,
Our
that's
amazing contact. But that's all right. We're happy to hype you because you've got so much knowledge, and that's why we're glad to have you here and run through all the problems you tell us that these, 100-year-old houses have.
Yeah, that's what you get me in for.
I know.
To give you all the news, good and bad.
Yeah. What do you say, Sam? It's a laundry list of all the things that's wrong with the property.
Oh, yeah. I just say, it's not a list of all of the positives. It's literally a list of the negatives. So let's not freak out by the 80-page plan we're about to get from Drew, pointing out all of the property faults. It's a maintenance plan for the future, but there's certain things obviously that will be deal breakers, which we'll get into. But why don't you start by telling us what your role is as a building inspector?
Yes, so I guess my role is to go to a property, give it a thorough inspection, top to bottom, climb in the roof, climb under the floor, go over everything, put a real detailed report together with the major defects, minor defects.
And what we love about your report, there's so many photos.
Yeah, I love
some
photos.
reports that you get, like if our clients come to us and they've already got a building inspector, and we get these 10-page reports with if they've got photos, they're tiny and you can't even see them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Your reports are so good.
Photos, they tell the story. So yeah, we take tons of photos, hundreds of photos every report, which all goes in there. So yeah, we get a lot of good feedback from that, and it helps us as well when we're going back through the report as well. And then down the track, if something comes back in the report, we can go back and go, well, there was an obstruction there, so we couldn't see it. So they help us as well.
Yeah.
So I guess doing the report and the inspection is a main part of our job, but also a really important part is having a conversation. Like calling you guys up afterwards, calling the client up, and just putting it all into perspective.
Totally.
Because reports come across pretty scary.
Yeah.
Because it's all just the defects. It's not so much the good stuff; it's all the bad stuff. So having that conversation is crucial for you guys, for the clients, and for us as well, just to calm it all down.
Yeah, to give it context.
Give it context. Absolutely. Yeah, it's a big part of our role, and it's something we train with our subbies, and we talk a lot about is that part of the process.
That's actually what I was going to ask. Do a lot of building and pest inspectors have a builder's background, or a lot of them ex-tradies? Are you an ex-tradie? Is that a red flag, a green flag if you are working with a building inspector that has been an ex-builder?
Yeah, all our guys are, and myself, ex sort of chippy.
Yeah.
But there is no regulation in Victoria for building inspectors. So really anybody can be a building inspector, which sounds kind of crazy.
Yeah.
But,
like buyer's advocates.
Yeah.
They can just do a little course and then.
Yeah, but the problem is now what's happening is because every man and his dog was getting into building inspections, there was a lot of insurance claims because they didn't have the tradie background, and they didn't sort of know what they were talking about, and they didn't know how to write a report. So the insurance companies is what's stopping slowing down the industry, I guess. So they have to be, have some kind of formal training, a minimum of a Cert 4 in building and construction. But so it's pretty important to get a bit of background on your building inspector because they need to know. They need to know what's inside the walls. They need to know, and then also need to know. If we find a defect, not just to put it in as a major defect or a major structural defect and leave it at that because they've seen something. They've got to sort of have a bit of an idea what's caused that defect.
Explain it,
how to rectify it, if it's going to cause ongoing problems. That sort of knowledge is key.
Yeah. I guess we get you looking at a lot of older property because that's what we love to buy clients and what our clients typically lean towards. But we have bought some newer properties, sort of one-off townhouses and things. Do you think, is it good to get you through new properties? Do you get a lot of business doing inspections for new? Is it a different type of inspection? Is that a specialty?
So, there's, I suppose, building inspections are broken up into, like pre-purchase building inspections, but then we're doing a lot more of new construction stage inspections.
Okay.
And they're becoming quite popular, and I think you mentioned it in one of your podcasts.
Yes.
The
TikTok inspector. I love
which,
him.
I get asked that question all the time.
Do you?
And I actually follow him now, and he's a bit
You should do one.
He's a bit of a character.
He is a character.
But he's quite good in picking up defects, but he's actually been really good for the industry, for our industry, because we're getting a lot of business because of him. It shows the importance.
Absolutely.
And new construction is some of it's
shocking, isn't it?
Yeah, it's terrible.
And you can't always know exactly what's gone down when you're looking at the finished product. Like really you need to be there in stages. So who's employing you for those during the staged
Is
inspections?
it the purchaser?
It's the purchaser. Yeah.
So they've brought off the plan.
Well, we're doing stage inspections now where it's right from the slab. So the inspector goes out there, checks to make sure all the slab heights are good and everything's okay with that. Frame stage, they come in again, lock up, all the rest of it. So we go in like 4 or 5 times over the course of the build, and our guys kind of build a relationship with the builder.
Yeah.
And say, hey guys, we're not here to, pick on everything. We just want to make sure you're doing everything to Australian standards. And they sort of end up helping the builder because the builder gets our reports and gives it to his tradies and his subbies and go, hey, you need to fix up X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
So we end up helping the builder with their sort of job a bit. But it's a very different report. It's all, not in the opinion of the building inspector. It's all Australian standards. This needs to be done. This is not done to Australian standards, X, Y, and Z, and put in all the clauses and all the rest of it. So it's a very different report.
Yeah. And is that like when you say Australian standards, obviously there's no specifics to Victorian building standards?
No, that's it.
No.
There is.
State by state.
Yeah, there is. But generally it's Australian standards sort of thing.
Yeah. So then if we've got a client that's buying, say, the new townhouse, the finished product, is that building inspection the same inspection that you would do on the 1950s house, or is it slightly different?
Yeah, it's a bit different. So I guess it's classed as a handover inspection.
Yes.
So it's a handover inspection, again, comes back to just Australian standards. And it can be a paint defect or a bit of silicon missing in a bathroom. So whereas a pre-purchase inspection, like, we don't really talk about the paint. We're looking at the structure sort of thing. We might talk about paint if it's, timbers on the exterior are deteriorating, so you give them a lick of paint to sort of protect them. But they are quite different inspections and very different reports and style of report writing.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I had you guys do one on a brand new townhouse for me. And all it had was like 4 different photos of paint defects. I was like, great, that's perfect,
Yeah.
A little bit of a paint defect is not a bad thing.
Yeah, absolutely. There is a lot of shonky builds going on out there, but there's also some really good ones as well.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, this was in Ashburton or something, and it was one of 2 maybe.
Yeah,
very small.
2 freestanding, and the developer had done there's 9 examples around Ashburton that he'd done. And some of them were 4 or 5 years old, so you could walk through and see, the quality of them, that they were standing the test of time, which is critical when it comes to a new build.
Absolutely. And Sam and I used to sell real estate in Richmond many moons ago, and we used to find that probably 1 in 10 buyers would get building and pest inspections. But on this side of the fence, we obviously recommend our clients get building and pest inspections on 100% of the properties. Maybe sometimes a 1970s flat you could get away with it. But so let's focus on older houses, not apartments. What are some of the like major common red flags that you've seen come up on reports?
Good old rising damp. I know you guys love.
Yeah. And that's typically in brick homes or weatherboard or both?
Brick. Yeah.
Yeah.
So rising damp's very common in the old period homes. It can be rectified. It can be expensive, but it also can be easily rectified. It might just be some subfloor ventilation to sort it out. Whereas if it's a lot of damp coming up through the walls, then it might be subfloor ventilation plus mechanical ventilation plus a damp-proof course being installed. Site drainage is a big one on these properties. And just the lay of the land can be a massive factor on a lot of these properties. So getting the water away from the house can make a big difference. But, there is ways to mitigate it. Every now and again, there is some properties where it's really difficult just because you can't get the water away from the house. There's no subfloor ventilation and there's no clearance there to actually get the ventilation through. So it can be really difficult sometimes. But, most of the times you can.
Yeah, so I remember there was one property in Thornbury that you actually failed. You're like, no, do not buy this, walk away. And luckily we had done it subject to building and pest inspection, so we could. But it was because it was a really flat block at the dip of the street. And so all the water just pooled underneath it. And I thought, gosh, that's so interesting because I think a lot of people naturally think they should be buying on flat blocks. Like heavily sloped blocks is not great, but actually from working with you, we've realised that, no, if they're slightly sloped, it's actually a really good thing for the property because the water has somewhere to go.
Absolutely. And if there is a drainage problem, it's a lot easier to get the water away. Get the drainage, get it away from the property. So, a bit of a slope on a block makes a big difference on properties I've found. So, and soil type. Soil type's a big one as well with properties.
What area has the worst soil? In Melbourne.
Richmond's pretty. There's a lot of movement. Richmond.
No, Collingwood.
Collingwood,
the houses in Collingwood, they're like.
I've never seen cracks like in houses, and we work across Greater Melbourne. I have never seen cracks in houses like I've seen in Richmond, Abbotsford, and Collingwood.
Yeah,
it's just it's insane. You can see the outside through the brickwork.
Yeah, there's a couple of those jobs where I've had structural engineers go in after I've been in there going, I'm pretty sure it's just the soil type. But get them in there and just to get a second opinion on some of these properties because the cracks are so big. And I've been amazed. They're like, it's just, or trees, the trees next to the house. It's sucking the moisture out of the ground. Yeah. House is fine sort of thing. So, big cracks and all the rest of it are not always a deal breaker. It's just part and parcel of where you're buying properties.
And it's funny because that can be one of the scariest things to see as a buyer. So a lot of buyers, I think we from working with you for so many years, we have learnt so much about what to look for and what to look out for and what can be easily rectified and what can't be. And the fact that something that can seem so scary, like a crack in the front wall where you can see outside, is not a deal breaker, but like secret rising damp on the party wall between you and your neighbour, is a deal breaker. It's just so interesting, and that's where obviously people can stomp around a house as much as they want and tap on walls. But unless you've got a moisture reader, you don't know what's going on.
Yeah, nowhere. But no, go for it.
That and a thermal camera. Thermal cameras are awesome.
The thermal camera.
Yeah, it's been coming alive this last week because the amount of rain we've had. There's been so many roof leaks and all the rest of it.
Yeah. But I don't want to look in my property, but that with rising damp being a problem in brick homes, not weatherboard, a lot of people's preference is to buy brick homes. What would your preference be if you had the choice out of a weatherboard home and a brick home?
Unrenovated.
Yeah, unrenovated as a building inspector. What would your preference be?
Oh,
this wasn't in your list of questions. So,
well, I guess they both come with their own set of issues.
Pros and cons.
Pros and cons.
Give us the pros and cons.
I guess a weatherboard home, they need a lot more maintenance. There's a lot of painting. There's a lot of wood rot. You've really got to stay on top of it all. Painting these days is pretty expensive if you're not willing to pull out a paintbrush yourself. But weatherboard homes, they've got a lot of flex in them. They can move around a bit. So I do like weatherboard homes. I like the look of them. They're quite nice to look at. But brick homes, I guess, Yeah, if a brick home does move around and does crack a lot, then it's going to need underpinning.
Yeah.
And underpinning can become really expensive.
Yeah.
But there's less maintenance if it's totally fine.
Yeah.
So you heard it
it's
first. Stop preferring brick homes over weatherboard.
Case by case basis.
Case by case, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do like the older style Victorian sort of homes with the extension out the back sort of thing.
Yeah.
The kind of old and modern kind of a look.
Yeah, the blend.
Yeah, I really like that sort of style.
Yeah.
And they do that well with weatherboards as well. But yeah, they definitely got the both pros and cons. My house is a brick home, but I cladded it in vertical boards. So I shiplapped it. So I've got a bit of both. So,
transformed it.
Yeah. So,
or the whole thing or just the back?
Most of it. It's a bit
Most
of
of
a
it.
So
mix
hang on,
of
tell us what. So
corrugation
this is like a wood cladding? No.
Yeah, it was a
Timber cladding?
silver top ash kind of shiplap cladding.
Okay.
Vertical
Yeah.
boards.
Nice.
Over top of breeze block. So I've done a bit of both. So
That's cool.
The insulation is good with the brick.
Yeah.
But the weatherboard obviously takes a bit of work, which I'm
Yeah.
willing to do. I'll get my kids to do it now.
Well, I feel like with weatherboard, it's like, okay, yes, I get it. You've got to deal with rotten boards and paint it, but you only really have to paint once every 10 years.
Yeah.
Like you're not having to, like if you do it one time, so let's say you've got like a double fronted, 3-bedroom standard weatherboard home on like a 300 square metre block. So it's not massive. You're not really paying more than 15 grand to paint that exterior. And then that's it for 10 years, done.
Yeah.
And the general rule of thumb with weatherboards is preparation for 2 weeks, painting for the, 1 week. So it's all about the prep work on weatherboards.
Yeah.
And, get the sanding it back, cutting out the rot, all the rest of it. So,
yeah, true.
So, yeah.
After you do inspect property, how much advice do you give clients around, you could fix it doing this way or do this to the bathroom or this will cost X, Y, and Z? Like, do you do that or is that a faux pas or do you find clients sort of ask you for, okay, if we need to fix rising damp, how much will that cost? And how do you go about answering that?
Yeah, it's a really common question.
Yeah.
And I suppose this is where our conversation with the client is really important. And I've sort of got to put two hats on. You've got to go, right, you do your building inspection and then you've got to go, okay, what would I do in that position? And, not freak people out. So I guess giving them advice around rising damp, a bit of a rough costing. It's always a bit of a, there's always a ballpark figure. But yeah, for instance, if there's a bit of a leak in the bathroom, it's classed as a major defect. If it's just early days of leaking, I can't change it from a major defect, but the advice I can give them over the phone and while I'm chatting to them is this has still got more life in it. Do get it resealed, get the silicone done. You can move in, if you've spent all your money on the cost of the build, on the build, then, you've still got a bit of life left in it that you can actually, get some live in it.
Yeah.
So, it's pretty important that those conversations.
Yeah.
We do get.
Do they ask you for renovation tips and how would you change this?
Yeah, absolutely, they do. Is this board load bearing?
Can you answer those sort of questions?
Yeah, we can if we know before we go there to look, sort of thing.
Yes.
But I suppose my advice is always don't go ripping out walls on your own. You get a builder in there to have a look to see if it is load bearing. Even though we can say yes, it's load bearing, or no, it's still advised not to go ripping things out.
Yeah.
Just because there might be something we can't see.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. We have one of my things that I always say to clients when we buy a house for them is like, after you've purchased, like as soon as you settle, just get a roof plumber out there to get up on the roof, just make sure it's all waterproofed. And if it's not, they can fix up any minor leaks because those things can turn into major problems down the track. That's assuming that our building inspection report came back clear, that there's no issues, there's no active leaks from the roof. But I say to them, go do that as one of your first things to do, particularly in this time of year where we're sort of, through the rainy months of the year. And I'm like, just get them up there. And that way that you're sort of set for the rest of the year and probably for the next few years. But is there anything else that property professionals should be aware of when it comes to building inspections and advice to clients sort of once they've moved in after we've received the reports from you?
I guess what you just said there about getting a plumber in is really important. That's always I give that advice as well. Just silicones don't last forever. I guess with wet areas. Keeping wet areas sealed is really important.
Yeah.
But I suppose advice around the exterior of the property as well. Like I find that I end up talking to a lot of clients about not building up the soil against the house.
Yes.
From a termite perspective, and also from a moisture in the wall type of perspective as well. You often see garden beds build up.
Yeah.
And they're often the garden beds built up with pre-sale works. They've put their little tan bark down and the cute little flowers, and that's going to create a problem in the future.
Yeah, soil against properties can cause a lot of problems. And most of 99% of our building inspections are building termite and pest inspections. So from a termite perspective, when I'm doing my building inspection and then put my termite hat on, then I go around and write a report based on all the different areas where it's conducive to termites, and soil is a big one. But, I think anything to do with moisture is really important.
It's the killer of all property, isn't it?
Yeah, so if you can keep on top of all your silicone work, shower, leaks, even like, for instance, if your shower screen silicones are deteriorating, a little bit of water dribbles out every day, gets onto the tile, runs across the tile, gets into the subfloor, gets into the chipboard, and then the chipboard and the subfloor starts to swell. And it pops a tile and all the rest of it. So that little bit of silicone, a $10 tube of silicone, can save a lot of dramas down the track.
Yeah, so can save having to deal with subfloors and joists.
Yeah.
Ripping things up. Yeah.
That's it.
So professional.
Bearers and joists.
Yeah.
I guess a general rule of thumb around bathrooms is when your silicones start to get a bit mouldy, which they always do, either get a sealant specialist in there or get in there yourself. It's not too hard a job. My wife does most of the silicone work. She's really good at it.
I'll bet she does. I don't put that past her at all. I'll bet she can do many a thing, Brooke.
Very handy. But actually, should we all be investing in a thermal camera for our household? Just to keep on top. Is that a thing? Is that a good takeaway?
Yeah.
Are they expensive? I don't know.
You can get ones that plug in the bottom of your iPhones now.
Really?
I think my ones are.
Maybe they're unreliable, like those breathalyzers.
Yeah.
Not that I've had one or used one.
They're actually, if you don't use them as a tool to find moisture, they're actually a great tool to play around with the kids and party tricks and all the rest of it.
So.
There you go. You know what's going in their Christmas gifts.
Stockings.
Thermal camera.
That's it. But you just touched on termites, which I think is such a big visceral reaction that people have to the word termites. What area in Melbourne do you see the most coming up in the reports? And are they deal breakers? Are they not? Talk to us about termites.
It's termites. So termites I've pretty much I've found in every suburb. So there's areas where it's not a termite zone. I still find termites.
Richmond,
everywhere.
Really?
Everywhere. I've found termites pretty much in every suburb. So it really depends on the location of the property, near parks, train lines, all that sort of thing, where there's lots of trees around. They're a bit more conducive to termites. But, if you go down towards, Carrum, Seaford, all down there, if you don't find termites in a house down there, you're kind of not looking hard enough almost.
Really?
There's, quite prolific down there. But there's also different types of termites, which is really important to note. So sometimes if I find termites in the garden, for instance, those garden termites, they don't normally go for the house.
Okay.
They're a damp wood termite. So it's important to know your termites and, again, not freak your clients out if you do find termites. But I suppose if I find termite damage in a house, the trickiest thing for us as a building inspector is our inspections are non-invasive. We can't move furniture.
Exactly.
We can't see inside walls. If the termite damage is old, that doesn't produce heat, it doesn't produce moisture. So when it comes to termite damage, our reports get pretty heavy on the
T's and C's.
The T's and C's. Because the reality is that sometimes, I'll be in a subfloor and I find termite damage in a bearer or joists or, structural timber, and that's classed as a major defect.
Yeah.
And you kind of go, okay, I found one timber that's got damage in it. Then you see the termite mudding, which is termites build these little mud tunnels. They don't like sunlight.
Yeah.
So they build these little mud tunnels and you see it disappear up into the bottom plate and up into the wall, and you're like, what's going on there? So, it doesn't matter how much tapping around we do,
Yeah.
how much,
Yeah.
how much of the inspection is, with the thermal camera and the moisture meter. A lot of the time it's impossible to find.
Yeah.
You only really find it when you start pulling plasterboard off the
Yeah,
walls.
Mm.
So in that scenario, then, if a client, or anyone, one of your clients, buys a house where you see that going on, so it's their dream house, though, and they buy it because they know where the value is. It's in the land, it's in the location, all of these different things, and they're going to renovate the property, and they're prepared to deal with a potential minor termite issue.
But termite would be considered a major defect.
Yeah.
No, is it?
When you
Depends,
put it on,
Okay.
There's most of the time, yes.
Okay.
But so you see what you can see, so non-invasive report, and then they buy the house, and then they want to get you in after the fact to now open the wall and tell them exactly sort of where it's at. Is that something that you can do for people?
I've never had. Well, generally, if they're going to be doing some renovations, they can pull the plasterboard off. It's pretty, easy to find termite damage once the plasterboard's, been removed. It's pretty obvious. So, but yeah, I mean, I guess I've been back to a property once where they've sort of, wanted me to check to make sure everything was all okay once the plaster was off, and I was just tapping all the timbers and found a bit more termite damage, but it wasn't spread too fast. So, but I suppose if you're going to do a renovation, when you start pulling plasterboard off the wall, it's going to be looking straight at you, sort of thing.
Because it looks like little track marks through the wood, right?
So termites don't like sunlight. So they stay just under the surface. That's why they can do so much damage. When they do want to go up some concrete stumps or some brickwork, they build little mud tunnels, and it's these little squiggly lines about sort of 3 to 5 mil sort of thick. So that's what you're sort of looking for, or that's what I'm looking for when I'm crawling around in the subfloor.
I
think people often see these little track marks in wooden floorboards and they think that they're termites, but they wouldn't be termites, would they?
No, they're wood borer.
Okay.
A lot of the time. So
is that a problem?
Not normally. There's a couple of different types of wood borer. Some can cause a little bit of structural damage, but it's not very common. In floorboards, you see those little squiggly lines. That's wood borer. Most of the time it's okay. It's only in the high traffic areas your foot might go through after 100 years of walking on that bit of flooring, and then you replace the timber. But wood borer are real slow sort of wood destroying insect.
Yeah. I was in a 130-year-old house yesterday, and it definitely had wood borer. And I was I couldn't remember what it was called, looking at the track marks in the floorboards.
Yeah.
But it looked like it was contained to one little area. Looked like it's from forever ago, before the floors were done 20 years ago, as in like stained and polished or whatever. I was like, so that can be treated, obviously, something like that.
You can't actually treat wood borer on a property. You can treat it in like a bit of furniture. You fumigate it, but it has to be in a container. But in a property, you can't actually really treat it. So the advice we have to give from a reporting point of view is you got to replace the timber. But put it into perspective, it's not normally a big problem.
Bit of character.
And I was talking to a builder recently, and he had some wood borer in the original part of the property, and the extension they wanted to continue the look of wood borer, so he actually paid extra to buy timber with a bit of wood borer damage in it, so it sort of flowed through, which I was like, okay.
Okay. I can see that. Yeah.
There's two other things that often come up in your reports that stress clients out, and one is stumps, and the other is underpinning.
Oh, I thought you were going to say asbestos.
Oh, that was the next one.
Yeah.
And asbestos. We can cover that too. So, I mean, with restumping, so older houses were built with timber stumps back in the day. From when did they start doing concrete stumps? Like, if you buy a 70s house, would you be able to be like, I'm pretty confident they're like a concrete slab or concrete stumps?
Yeah, probably around the 60s, 70s, but I suppose a house on concrete with timber stumps, it's not too hard a job. Let me rephrase that. If the house there's lots of clearance in the subfloor. It's not too big a job. It doesn't, normally cause too much damage. They can straighten the house out a little bit while restumping, which can cause a little bit of cracking internally. Where it can become a bit expensive and be a bit more invasive is little townhouses that have got no clearance They've got no access to the subfloor. So in order to restump, you've actually got to rip up all the floorboards internally
and go from the inside.
and go from the top down.
Yeah.
And now with rules of, if you've got to stay to Australian standards when they're restumping, they've got to remove quite often a lot of soil to allow enough airflow and clearance below the bottom barrier between that and the soil. So that's where it can become a little bit more tricky.
Yeah.
Yeah. So can you because I feel like there's a lot of, I guess, just zero understanding from a general public about restumping and what that can mean, because there's a bit of a spectrum of works that can be done to fix what people walk through and they see like a wonky floor and then they think, oh, the house needs to be restumped. But if you could just talk a little bit about like the sort of phases and stages that there can be of works that can be done. So like there's, a lot of the timber stumps are on concrete footings.
Oh, no. They've got concrete at the top.
No, concrete footings in the bottom.
Oh, do they?
And so that's been re-stumped at some point, but maybe it needs to be re-leveled.
Yeah. So, re-leveling is a pretty easy process.
Yeah.
Again, due to clearance. But, if I suppose if you go from – if a house has been re-stumped, it's going to be on concrete stumps, concrete sort of footings. The house can still move around after settlement. If it's in a soil type that moves around a lot, then after a year, 6 months, a restumping company can come back, climb underneath, and it's called jack and pack, where they jack it up a little bit, jack the bearers up a little bit, the house, and put little packers in between the stump and the timbers.
Like when you're on a wobbly cafe table and you put some napkin under the side.
That's a great analogy.
It is. I like
Mr. Analogies.
So, but having a house that's got wonky floors or uneven flooring, it's not the end of the world.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean the house is falling down. And a lot of the times people get used to it.
Yeah.
And they just like, okay, we're good with this. And the other thing, when people ask me about restumping or re-leveling, a big factor to that is it's going to cause cracking. If you want to re-level, especially around wet areas, you don't want to be cracking tiles. You don't want to be causing leaks in bathrooms. So, it's not a too big a job, I guess, to re-stump in the grand scheme of things. It's definitely got a lot more expensive, like everything.
And it doesn't take that long, does it? A couple of weeks or something?
No, generally days.
Oh, a couple of days.
It depends on the size of the house.
This is where people, they're so frightened
I
of
think
it.
people get scared of restumping. But the biggest thing is the damage it can cause internally once you do it. That's sort of, that changes the cost. So you've got the cost of the restumping, and that can be done in a few days. But what if now, the floor in the bathroom just goes.
Yeah, that's right. Generally, a restumping company will level the property out to stop, so the doors and the windows unjam. And then they leave it at that.
Yeah.
Until the rain comes and then it moves the house around again.
Yeah.
But underpinning's a bit more full on than restumping?
I guess there's now the resin underpins these days, which is a resin injection they pump into the underneath the footing, and they can lift corners of buildings up and sort of level things out. It's non-invasive as well, so you're not ripping up concrete and all the rest of it. Whereas the concrete underpins, they're quite a bit more expensive. You do need to dig big holes. They have to put jacks in there that they then concrete the jacks in and leave them there.
Oh.
God, every story you're saying, I'm like, I know a house that they got quotes for that.
Yeah,
they're very different in pricing, the resin underpins.
So much cheaper resin.
Yeah, and I was having this conversation the other day about how good are they? How long do they last?
Yeah,
and I don't know, to be honest. It's, I mean, they give like 10-year warranties and things like that. But I guess you kind of think you got concrete and you've got this kind of foam resin sort of stuff. In my mind, I'm thinking concrete's going to last. But apparently they're doing good things with it and they're lasting. I know it works quite well. If your footpath is dropped, not to actually lift a house, but just drill a hole in the top of the footpath, pump some resin under there, and they level it up, beautifully.
Yeah. For the next 7 years.
Yeah, well.
Yeah,
that's right.
And then asbestos. Talk to us.
Asbestos. So pretty much every home pre-80s has got asbestos in it. It's generally in the eaves. If the property hasn't been renovated, it's often in behind the wall tiles in the shower, the laundry splashback, the kitchen splashback. So I guess the big thing is that if you leave asbestos alone, it's classed as being okay. If it's painted and encapsulated, no broken edges, then it's classed as being safe. If you're doing a renovation on a property and it's pre-80s, don't go nuts on your weekend and start ripping the walls apart and pulling the tiles off the wall. You can get a test done. It costs about $80 for a sample. And the reality is, if you do have asbestos in your bathroom, say if it's behind the tiles, wall tiles, floor tiles, it generally adds about $1,500, $2,000 to your total bathroom renovation cost.
Yeah, and that's because they've got to remove it
with
properly,
a specialist.
Yeah, they come in and remove it, but they take all your tiles away, so they're kind of gutting it for you. So in the grand scheme of things, it's not a too big a deal. But yeah, it does come up quite a bit, and people are quite nervous with asbestos, which is fair enough. Like, I'm pretty careful. I've been working with it for years, but I'm super careful with when I'm crawling in a subfloor, I'm fully masked up. I know they always have a bit of asbestos debris around the shower area.
Yeah, back in the day, they used to do a reno and just chuck the asbestos under the house. So you've got to be careful.
Exactly. But even old fences on properties, boundary fences, they were often asbestos.
Yeah.
So
clients actually said they had asbestos in their paint.
Yeah. They used to put asbestos. I think it's in like 3,500 products.
Yeah.
Used to be in
wasn't it like
cigarette
it was
butts
like, oh my
and
God,
everything.
look at this amazing product we've got. It's, fire safe and this, that, the other is so sturdy, so strong. Let's use it on everything.
Yeah.
Wasn't that sort of
Until
the thing?
people started dying.
Well, they still use it in certain countries.
Do
because
they?
it's such a great material.
Oh.
So it still gets used quite a lot.
So when you look at like a fibro cement house that's got like fibro cement sheeting on there as the cladding, is that the same or different?
No. So you've got a lot of beach properties.
Yeah.
Have the asbestos cladding.
Yeah.
Whereas cement sheet or fibro is, it's very different. So it's but it's quite hard to tell the difference.
What's what exactly?
The boat, for some reason, they produced it the same colour.
Yeah, that grey.
You can. There's a few ways, I suppose, telling what it's, what it is, and by tapping on it and things like that, it makes different sound.
Does it?
To asbestos. So I guess, at the end of the day, if you don't know what it is, just get it tested.
$80 test.
$80 test.
There's a lot of houses in like Frankston area and out in the Dandenong Ranges that are all fibro cement built. The actual exterior is. So trying to work out.
People think it's asbestos cheating.
Well, or it could be.
It could,
it could be.
Yeah.
We don't buy fibro houses in general, but it could be asbestos.
Yeah,
and you might
absolutely.
not know. You might think it's fibro. Yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of the times when we do reporting, I have to put it in the report as suspected asbestos.
Yeah.
We can never say this is asbestos. So it's always worth getting the test done. Even though a lot of properties, exactly that it is asbestos, we still have to put in there suspected. And just, $80, get a sample done. It's not too difficult.
Yeah.
So we've gone through a few of the things that people might see on their report if they use 8-point building inspections, which is site drainage, rising damp, asbestos, restumping, underpinning. Doesn't sound like any of these are your deal breakers. Do you have a deal breaker?
Yes. Definitely. There's a couple.
Yes.
Flat blocks.
No. Massive termite damage is a big one. And especially if I'm finding termite damage at one end of the subfloor and then I'm finding it at the other end of the subfloor and then I'm finding a bit in the roof space, I'm like, there's a lot of termite damage here. I'm just sort of working out what's going on internally. But also some of these, 10-year-old homes that have been built so poorly.
Yeah.
They've got box gutters that are undersized. They overflow every time it rains. And you can just sort of see that there's water damage down the wall. So then you're going to be thinking mold and all the rest of it.
Oh, my God.
And they're not going to last. They'll last another 5-10 years and, they need to be sort of knocked down sort of things.
Wow. What area are you finding those? Is there one specific?
No, that's kind of just,
all over the
it
place.
depends on the builders. It's all over the place. Some of those properties.
Yeah. Poorly built properties that were done like 10 years old, clearly already have problems.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Balconies, leaky balconies.
Oh, my God, they're brutal.
And that's why a lot of people think like you don't need to get a building inspection done on like your apartment that's 5 years old, 10 years old. And it's like, they're probably the ones you really do. It's the 70s ones you can probably forget about.
Yeah.
Unrenovated, yeah.
Yeah, unrenovated.
Yeah.
But the new apartments or, 5 to 10 get building inspections done.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, it's generally the whole house. If it's been built poorly, it's something going on with the whole house,
Yeah.
the roof, the everywhere.
Ooh.
Whereas, the other major defects you just mentioned, they can be fixed. They're generally quite localized.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that would be my couple of deal breakers.
Love it. Very helpful. I feel like there's so much more to cover, but we don't have enough time.
Always.
So we've come to our favourite segment. Sam, give him his
F, marry, kill.
Right.
I know you know about this, Drew.
Yeah, because you listen to our podcast and we love that.
Yes,
You're a loyal listener.
Loyal follower.
Can I tell you one problem about your podcast?
Go on.
Is your jingle.
Is it bad?
No, it's awesome. It's so good. It gets stuck in my head.
Really?
The whole day while I'm listening to it, I'm like, that damn jingle. It's like a
all day when I
level.
listen to it. I love it. Do you have us on repeat just hearing our gnarly voices?
No,
all
it's
I'm going to have stuck in my head for the rest of the day is red leather, yellow leather, red leather.
Practicing to speak properly on the podcast.
All right. F, marry, kill. Asbestos, site drainage, restumping.
Well, they're all not too bad.
Yeah.
Really. Like you can mitigate any of them. But I suppose site drainage would probably be the one that is the kill.
Yes.
Okay,
Interesting.
Yeah, just because it's a bit of an unknown.
Yes.
You just don't know what's involved and how far it
what
goes.
do? You start digging. If you don't have the fall, what the hell are you doing?
Yeah, exactly. What were the other two? Asbestos and
restumping.
Restumping. They're pretty much par. Like I could marry either of those because, they're not too bad to mitigate. But probably marry asbestos, which sounds weird.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
F.
Yeah.
Restumping.
No.
You'll have a play around with some restumping.
Oh my gosh, love it, Drew. Thanks so much for joining us. We hope you haven't been too scared of all our questions, but I think it will be so interesting for people listening to hear what you have to say about these very terrifying words that are often floated around when it comes to real estate.
And don't forget to get a building inspection before you buy property.
Yes.
Amen, sister.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Thanks, Drew.
Love it. Thanks,
Love
Drew.
it. See you guys.